but it was adapting to creatures that intelligent creatures that are not human. And
actually, I really would like to hear what you called Alien Boot Camp, the beginning of this, the way they. Well, I went through U.S. Air Force boot camp, and of course, what they're doing is exactly that, separating the wheat from the chaff, those who will make it from those who will not, those who are Air Force material from those who are not.
Right.
And they're teaching you to respond without thinking to orders. In other words, you get an order, you just do it. You don't think about it, you just do it. And that's what boot camp's all about.
Well, it's very similar. And see, I didn't even have any understanding of that. And but it was to break you down, and it did just that. And it again,
using what kind of methods? How did they do what they did?
Well, the first thing was that was going the easy way. When a craft is in flight or in motion, and they want to pull matter, being whatever it may be, like cows or humans or whatever it might be. In my case, me. That's a whole different world. The first thing that happens is you hear a sound that's like a whipping, whirling sound. It starts off at a low RPM, and it starts getting louder, like somebody has a whip, like a when it just gets louder and louder.
Right.
And you're hearing it in your head, and then in your torso, where the lower part of your torso, you feel like an energy coming up towards your chest, and then when this energy reaches your heart starts racing like 1,000 beats per minute is what it seems like, and I mean it's just almost racing out of your chest, and then you get this almost like a roller coaster sensation, like G-force is like 100 times, but you don't get the sensation that you're going up. You feel the sensation of you're being pulled down like you're going down a roller coaster, only 100 times faster, and you're screaming inside your head, I don't want to die, I don't want to die, and your heart's racing, and this is going on, and then you black out. That was like the first, that went from the nice, easy walking through the window to that. And here's where I was for 6 years. When I awoken from the first time that I blacked out, I was in the same room, dimly lighted. Light was coming from nowhere but yet everywhere. You couldn't pinpoint where the light was. Paralyzed. I sat on something that would be like a bench, and in front of me was something that looked like a table with a screen on it or a monitor on it. Now, this is 18, 20 years ago, and I wasn't into computers. I didn't even know anything about those things in that day. I wasn't into that.
Right.
And then in front of me was a wall about 4 or 6 feet in front of me, and it had another huge monitor in it. And I was paralyzed except for the fact that I could move my head up and down to look at the wall screen and to look at the monitor screen on the table, and I could move my right hand, but not my arm against the table. And what later proceeded was I would use my right forefinger to like an etch-a-sketch, like when you were a kid, when you used to do that, and it would leave a trail or a trace.
Sure.
Only it would show up either on the wall screen. I called it wall screens. Now I know they're monitors these days.
Oh, that's what I was going to ask, if you could make out what was on the monitors.
That was that's how they started me off. As a matter of fact, see, there's no social skills with these guys, and they're completely telepathic. They use screen imaging to create things in your mind to make you think you're somewhere else or you're doing something else. All their technology is thought activated. They travel dimensions, they travel time, and it's all technology. And I hung on to that these aren't devils, these aren't this. I kept a logical and frame of reference as I possibly could. But right at the beginning, it wasn't, would you like to be here, or we're this, or we're that. As a matter of fact, my peripheral vision for many months at the beginning was almost completely gone, so I couldn't see who my captives were, or my,
Jim, I would like to ask how you even kept your sanity, and the reason I ask that is your analogy, going back to Air Force boot camp in San Antonio, there were a lot of people after 3 or 4 days of this, they were screaming, me included, "Mommy, I want to go home. What the hell have I done to myself?" That was, with a good Earth-like, though harsh, frame of reference. You had no frame of reference.
None.
How did you keep from going bananas?
Hate and anger. And I think it's what kept 90% at that point, 90%, it got up to 90% of retaining everything in my face that went on. Total hate, and well, I should say total anger and total hate, intense hate and intense anger. I screamed, well, some of the words I use, naturally I can't use on the air. Where am I, and who are you, and why am I here? And I couldn't even figure out for a second why. But
were you able to vocalize all of this? In other words, if you shouted invectives or whatever, you could actually make a sound, and you could hear that you were making a sound.
Yes, and then my tormentors at the time, I guess you could call them that, would paralyze my vocal cords too. If in their whatever view enough was enough. But they were really odd. Again, they have no social skills, at least at that time. And now I know they're grays. I couldn't even see what my captains were at the time. It took a few months before I could catch them in my peripheral vision. And they were these, well, what I now know, there's what I call the true grays, which are biological beings. And then there's the worker beings, which I think a lot of people talk about, and they're half biological and they're half robotic, and those are the short ones with the big heads and the giant eyes. I think the eyes are used primarily to soak in any kind of energy source for them to move around, almost kind of like solar panels, so to speak. They take.
All right. At some point, Jim, you went to a very important person. You went to Dr. Mack to help you in dealing with these people, with the creatures.
Correct. That was. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, that's quite all right. Proceed. I just wanted to find out how Dr. Mack dealt with you and how he helped you.
Well, Dr. Mack came in. I came into his picture. He came into mine. Oh, gosh. I could be off a couple of years more or less because this is 18 years of this. Right around 94. So that would have been 88 and 6. That would have been like 6 years later. See, because for 6 years I was paralyzed and couldn't do anything. But, well, I can tell you about, you were asking me how they made me do things. It was punishment, reward. It was real simple, but I can get into that in a minute.
Okay.
But Dr. Mack came into the picture through, I went to my first abductee support group meeting in right around 95, I think it was, 6, 7 years later. And, again, I didn't even know these things were around. And the then director of MUFON for Rhode Island, David Rubian, happened to be at the meeting because he wintered in Florida, and he was a friend of Dr. Mack's. And, he was listening, of course, to some of the stories and the experiences, and through David is how I met John. What was really cool about John Mack was just so special.
Yes.
He was the pioneer and everything. He had to take the rotten eggs and tomatoes thrown at him, and
I know.
For what
I did a good solid 12, 13 interviews with John Mack, Jim. So I knew him very well.
Well, I got pretty close with him too. I was really lucky. But what John enjoyed with myself was the fact that the experiences were conscious. He was writing Passport to the Cosmos at the time. I was able to fill in some gaps where people, don't have the memory or they don't retain the memory.
Right.
Because none of the experiences did come from regression, although I think regression is good, but in my case, it never was necessary. And so a relationship flowered at that point.
Well, was an amazing man. Punishment, you mentioned they conditioned you with punishment and then some sort of reward, I suppose, when they were what they considered to be good. So when we get back from the break, Jim, let's go into that a little bit. We've got so much to take care of tonight, so much information. Stay right where you are. Ladies and gentlemen, I told you this was going to be a very special night. Jim Sparks is indeed a very special guy. And he's going to recount to you in great detail, because he remembers in great detail years and years of abductions, what they want, what they did,